Everyone wants to sell to the C-suite, but almost everyone is doing it wrong. Here's the truth about what executives actually want in 2025. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, I have a powerhouse guest. One of my favorite episodes all year so far. This is Jessica Gilmartin. And here's why I am a big fan of Jessica and why you should be as well. So let me just give you a background. Jessica, she only has a cool name. That's my sister's name as well. Jessica was the chief revenue officer and the CMO at Calendly. Jessica was the head of revenue at Asana. Jessica was the chief marketing officer at Honor. And Jessica right now works on and sits on several different boards and boardrooms when it comes towards helping teams of many different sizes, these executives, to be able to make decisions. She knows what it is that executives want. And in this episode, we break down some of the simple, like some of the most annoying things that we do. And I'm going to confess that I've done some of these things thinking that this was the right thing. But executives are telling us what we should do to sell to them nowadays. The game's changed. And if you follow these things, I personally know you're going to see a difference because it's what they're sharing and it's what my experience have led me to believe and to come to know. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, you better subscribe because I'm going to tell you every single time we're going to drop a gem like this, you're going to love it. If you have been listening for a while, I want you to go ahead and show us some love on LinkedIn. And just let me know that you're listening to the podcast. I'll greatly appreciate that. As we dive in, you'll get a chance to hear why this challenge is so critical at a high level right now, and what Jessica feels why salespeople are running into a dilemma with this issue about trying to get to the executive. Her strategies and the ways that she goes about it. I mean, I ain't going to tell you. Listen to her. Let's dive in. Jessica, welcome to the show.
I'm very happy to be here.
Jessica, I've done, this episode will be 1928, and I don't get this giddy about episodes that often. And not to say against anyone else we had on our show, but I'm just really fascinated with this topic. I think it's something super relevant. You had me at hello when you talked about when we started talking about this discussion, because it is so pertinent right now. I hear it from sellers all the time. And I just got off of a call earlier today with a new potential client. And one of the same issues they're facing is similar around this topic. And here's what it is. Selling to the C-suite, it's not the way that it used to be. And the game is changing and it's harder. So I bragged about you and your experience. I want to just dive in and talk about this challenge. What has changed? Why is this not the same like, when, in the past, or even yet some people thought they understood the C-suite, but they actually get to the C-suite and sound like an idiot when they get there.
Yeah.
Why is this more of a problem nowadays, or is it always been an issue?
Yeah, I think I wonder whether people have just always gotten bad advice about this because I don't know that it's ever changed. I think it's just one of those things where people assume that C-suite executives know everything that's happening in the organization. They're setting the budget, they're setting the priorities, and if they only get to the C-suite, in my case, the CMO or the CRO, which is what I was at Calendly and over various organizations, they only get to the C-suite, then they will unlock all the money and all the budget. And I just don't think that's ever been true. And I think maybe even it's potentially worse these days because we just have so many tools. Like the average marketing team, even a relatively small one, probably has 40 to 50 different marketing tools that they're using. Sales is probably similar. So if you think about that, there's no way that a CMO can understand all 50 to 100 things that their team is using and can be directly involved in every one of those decisions. It's just not possible.
So, and that brings an interesting play on it. Like, because yeah, I think it's an old school advice that you got to get to VITO, very important top officer, or you got to get to decision maker.
Yeah.
You got to have decision maker because and it's kind of like this figmentive idea of Oz, right? If we get to Oz land or get to decision maker land, then everything is perfect, which is not. But give me the reality of what if I am going after a C-suite, or I'm due, when should I even try to sell to the C-suite before we even get to that? Like,
Yeah.
when is it even relevant for me to bring in or go after you for the CMO?
I don't even know how often it's relevant to go after a C-suite. So
I
I
think
have
that's
worked.
like the click to tweet right there or something.
I
Are you
know
just
there's
trying to
every.
protect? Is this like an advertisement to protect C-suite? Just
Yeah,
like, no, don't
exactly.
go after them.
I know every chief sales revenue officer is cringing right now, but CMOs and CROs, at least, and I obviously I can't speak to other, well, I potentially can speak to other C-suite members because I have been part of it for many, many, many years. I'm on the board of a tech company. I do a ton of consulting and advising now. I have a lot of interaction engagement with CEOs and CFOs, CIOs. So I have a reasonable sense of how they all think. And, you know, a lot of what we do is helping our teams be successful by giving them power and decision making and budget. And I think that that's probably the biggest insight that I don't know how much people realize, is that I actually have very little day to day responsibility for budgeting, for priorities, for work. If I, and obviously this is a mid sized company. So if you're talking
Mhm.
about a very small company with a team of 5, things are different. But as soon as you start to get to companies with $50 million in revenue, 100 million plus, things look very different for a C-suite. It's just we're not thinking about the day-to-day tools and technology. And so oftentimes what happens is if I try to get on the phone with the salesperson, and data is obviously a really big thing right now, right? So if I try to get on the phone with the salesperson and they're asking me what my tech stack is, they're asking me what my data stack is, how I do reporting. I mean, I literally have no idea. And that's the case for almost every CMO. We are the consumer of data. We're the consumer of things that our team gives us, but we don't know the details. There's just no way. And so we can't make intelligent decisions about the types of tools that we should use because we just don't know all the intricate details. Like if I told one of my team members that they had to use a certain tool, they would murder me in my sleep because they're the ones that understand. They'd be like, Jessica, we can't use that because it doesn't integrate with XYZ, or we can't use it because we use this other thing. And I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. But so here's two parts to this. Being the devil's advocate here, but I'm different. My solution is different. It does require the executive. The executive need to have I need to have an executive buy-in in this. How often is that true, though?
Uh, I would say it's true in that I will sign off on the final budget. So this is
Okay.
typically how it works, and I'll share kind of a couple of different
Yeah.
ways that buying decisions tend to happen. So the first way is I will be in some kind of event or a Slack group or something, or I'll be talking to my CEO and I'll hear about something, or I will understand that there's some new priorities or something new that's coming that I was like, oh, I didn't think about, and I need to think about it, and I'll do some research. So, AI SEO is a great example where this is something that's very new. And I've realized over the past year that this is something that we need to really think about. So I will do research. I'll check in with friends. I'll find out some solutions, and then I'll go to one of my team members and say, hey, this is really important. You need to think about this. Here are some companies you should look at. And then they'll go and then they'll do some research and come back to me. So that's one way that this, I think, is fairly common, is that we just hear about things or just something new is on the horizon. I'd say that that's probably 20 to 30% of the time. The vast majority of the time, I'm sitting down with my team. And this is how, good teams should operate. I'm not saying
Yeah.
every team operates. This is how good functioning teams should operate, which is I'm sitting down with my leadership team at the beginning of the year or even at every quarter and saying, what are our priorities? What are the things what's our budget? What's our budget for tools? Don't we use anymore? What budget can we free up? And then what do we need to buy? And then we're thinking about, okay, one of our big priorities is maybe a new data stack, maybe it's AI sales tool, maybe it's a new enrichment tool. And then we just agree that there's a certain budget for those. And then each of my team members go off and they do a bunch of research. They talk to the vendors and they come back to me and say, hey, and usually they do a really thorough analysis where they present it to me and say, I've talked to these 3 vendors. This is the price, these are the pros and cons. We discuss it. Sometimes if it's a big enough purchase, and that's got to be minimum probably $40,000-$50,000 where I'm even interested in it, I'll say, let me get on the phone with them so I can understand it. And then that's when I will give the final okay. And then sometimes it even has to go to the CEO, the CFO, if it's probably a 6-figure purchase.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm not really interested, and I'm going to let my team members make the final decision because I've given them the budget for it. And ultimately, they're responsible for the success.
So the idea here, a couple things. One, if there's, as a seller, I need to figure out the threshold of where this project may lie, and then that's how, based on how I might go after the sales process, and then also including trying to get an executive buy-in. And then 2, I hear some sellers in the background going with the old school mentality to say, well, that means I have to rely on your team member to sell it to you, as opposed to me sell it to them. How can I still sell it through them to you? What can I do to get to that point without still getting to you maybe yet?
Yeah.
Am I making
And
sense on that?
No, it does. And I will tell you, there's nothing more annoying to me and to my team members than a salesperson having a conversation with someone on my team, and they're having a good conversation, and then the salesperson emails me. And I'm like, I don't want to be emailed. I trust my team members, and literally I will forward it to, my team member and say, WTF, why is this person emailing me? And then it just makes them look bad. Like it makes the person that works for me look bad, because it makes them feel like, hey, I'm the steward of this relationship. Now you're going over my head. And they're embarrassed because I got pulled in. My time is wasted when I don't need to be. I don't need to be involved in the vendor discussions. It's just not helpful. And so I would say to a salesperson, do not do that. It is very annoying to a C-suite. And it just causes a lot of churn, because sometimes I don't even know that someone on my team is looking at one of these vendors.
Yeah.
And so then it just creates a whole thing where they're like, oh, I wasn't going to tell you yet because we were just starting the conversation. And so it just makes everybody look bad. So I would say, don't do it. It's just not helpful. And I would say really probably the most important thing for the salesperson is, as you said, ask those questions of, hey, what is the process here? Does your boss know? Like, does the CMO know? Does the CFO know that you are looking into this? Because sometimes sometimes a head of growth marketing, a VP, will be looking into a solution. They don't actually have budget for it. And then C-level person's probably going to say no. So I would ask those questions first. That'd probably be the first thing I'd ask in the discovery is this budgeted? Is this prioritized? Or are you just on a fishing expedition? And if it's budgeted and prioritized, then I would say you probably don't need to have a C-suite person involved anytime in the near future.
And see, that's the interesting part there, because like you said, you trust your team. They can spend up to 10 grand. So have at it, kid. Like go do your thing. I trust you. Maybe it's just like, let me know eventually, but that part I don't need to skip around. And I think that's where most sellers miss, because they may not have had those business conversation, to have the business acumen to kind of have that type of discussion that would then prevent the embarrassment, like what you're sharing, which it makes everybody look bad at that point, to try to jump over somebody's head, which very fascinating. Old school mentality for sure, on that one. But Jessica, you also bring something up as a discovery. Let's say I do eventually get to you. This is a capital expense at this point, maybe CapEx, and we're going to spend, high end 5 figures, 6 figures on this deal. The disco phase, I know you have strong opinions on the disco. And I'm not talking about John Travolta or dancing here, Saturday Night Fever, but talk to me about your view from an executive standpoint when it comes to the disco.
Yeah, I mean, I do like some disco music. I do not like to be discoed. So yes, no executive likes to be discoed. We hate it. And I've say so. My very first sales job was years and years ago, and our board members told me that I had to do discovery. And so the first calls, I did all the discovery, and it was such a giant waste. We lost so many deals because we spent the whole time doing discovery, and we never actually sold our product. And so I learned after about the third call, no more discovery. And so I would say that the important thing in when talking to a C-suite is that you have done your discovery already by talking to other members of the team. So get all that out of the way. I don't want to answer any questions. I want to see a demo of it, and I want to ask questions. That's all that I want because at this point, what should have happened, and this is what a salesperson needs to make sure. So what a salesperson needs to make sure before they get on the phone with me is that they understand why we're doing this. Why are we implementing this? What problems are we trying to solve? They have confirmed that there is budget and there's priority for it. And they've confirmed that I am aware of this. And, and they also can ask the person that works for me, like, what questions do I have? Right. So they should be trying to understand. And the person that's working for me, like, they're the most incentivized to make this thing work. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna use Darren, who is my old head of growth marketing at Calendly. Hi, Darren, if you're listening. So,
Hi, Darren.
Hey, Darren. So Darren, if he's desperate, for example, to get in a new, data was a really big thing. So say he's desperate to get in a new reporting platform. Nobody cares more about reporting than Darren does. Nobody does at Calendly. And so, his job is to make sure that he's giving all the right information to the salesperson. In our one-on-ones, his job is to make sure that he's prepping me and saying, hey, I've talked to these 3 vendors. I really like this one. We're going to get on the phone. These are the types of things that I want you to ask. And this is where I think it's going to be great. These are my concerns. So he's already fully prepped me. And so, and he's going to say, hey, I want you on the phone because of this. And so I'm on the phone for one very specific reason. And, usually it's, I need to make sure I understand it so I can sell it to my CEO or CFO, or I want to understand it because I want to make sure that it's actually going to work for what we need. Or, whatever reason, but there's usually a specific reason that I am going through this demo. And so the job of the salesperson is to know that already. And so the call is them showing me the product so that I can ask questions of it. And then at the end, they should say, hey, have I answered all your questions? Anything else you need from me? And then that should be the conversation.
So it seems like every time we're getting back, Darren and I need to be in lockstep.
Yes.
And if I'm going to outbeat the other 3 vendors that he's looking at, 2 vendors, I need to figure out a way to get to what really drives Darren. What is what's in it for him, and how can I help him win? Because he's going to look at a product that's going to best help him, or the vendor help him win. And also to, he's going to come to an executive to show, listen, this is the best one. So instead of me dinkering around trying to skip over him to go to you, look at what's in it for Darren. How can I best help Darren win? And do a darn good job of that. Then he's going to more than likely pick me as that vendor to come to the next level.
100%.
Yeah. Because what I'm getting is it's very, unless you and I have a relationship, it seems like anything I do, I'm going to muddy up the water with you and Darren. But if you and I, we have a relationship, I might, touch base with you, blah, blah, blah. I spoke with Darren. You probably still say, awesome, DK, he's great. Work with Darren. You maybe can influence that part. But the point is, I don't know you. I go with Darren, build a relationship with Darren, figure out how to make Darren win.
Yes. And by the way, it's the same exact thing. So all the time I will get pings or forwards from my CEO saying, hey, a friend of mine just started a business, or a friend of mine just did this or whatever. And they have this new tool. And then I roll my eyes and I say, okay, I'll look into it because that's what you got to do. And then all I do is I forward it down to my team and I say, hey, my CEO wants us to look at this. And then they roll their eyes and they look at it. And usually they say, I guess we'll have a conversation because of the relationship. But if it's just not part of our priorities, it's just noise. And so I think that that's really one of the challenges to it. It really has to be, one of our priorities, because it's not like every tool out there isn't great. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of tools out there that are absolutely fantastic and solve a real problem. It's just not every company has the same problems. And I don't have trillions of dollars of budget to buy every tool. And actually, the more important thing, it's not even the money, it's the head count. So the fundamental problem that most companies have is that even if we have the budget, we don't have the people to implement the tools. So in most organizations, you probably have, if you call it 100 salespeople, you might have one or two people that are actually implementing all the sales tools, and the same thing in marketing. And so when you think about, hey, there are endless tools that we could implement, but only one or two people that can actually do all the massive amount of work to do it, that's the real budget allocation, is the headcount. So we have to only pick 2 to 3, 4 pieces of technology that we can implement a quarter at the most, just because of that shortage of headcount to be able to implement it. And so that's another really big issue, is that it's, again, like, it's not that there aren't amazing tools out there. We just don't have the bandwidth to implement all of those.
So it's not even a fact, Jessica, that even if I have an easy to implement solution, or if I could take care of some of the headache, it still doesn't matter. There's still policies and things that need to be taken care of to implement this effectively across the organization, where your folks have to do that. And it doesn't matter what I can do, that piece can't be changed.
It can't be changed also because every single piece of technology, and even a medium-sized organization, has to go through security, privacy, legal, finance. There's just a whole process, and there's just only so many people that can do that. And so we typically have to submit our list of priorities to the organization, and then they prioritize it too. So for example, at the beginning of a quarter, I will tell our legal and finance team, I'm planning to implement technologies to help our, an AI, a content, right? I'll give them like a list of concepts that I want to go after, and I'll say, this is the budget. Then they will say, okay, yes, you can get 4 contracts. And that's what I get. And then I work with my marketing operations team and sales operations team to say, okay, we're going to implement 4, pieces of technology in these different realms, these different genres. And then that's when they go out and then they source and find the pieces of technology, and then we go through the process.
Wow. All right. This is good. So listen, sellers, you guys came on this call. You didn't think it was going to go this perfect, huh? This is amazing. This is so good. You kind of answered this question I had, Jessica, was how are the decisions being made? Which sounds like, it's down at the, Darren, for example. Darren's ear is like burning for sure now, but Darren is
love Darren.
He's doing research. Then it comes up to you as the CMO, and then that decision. But I'm curious, but what are those criteria though, or how are you making that decision? It sounds, again, just some legal and some of those other components, but what are some of the things that I don't know that I should be aware of?
Yeah, so typically, like a really good RFP process, and a good sales ops leader, a good marketing ops leader will put together a really strong RFP. And it doesn't have to be, it's not this incredibly long bureaucratic thing, but they are in advance coming up with a list of criteria that are important to them. And so they are, obviously price, but that's not always the most important thing.
Sure.
And so what they're looking at is, are they going to meet our security and legal requirements? That's really important, because we don't want to go through a long process and find out that we're going to get rejected by legal and privacy. So we're going to ask those kind of questions. We're going to ask if we need to have integrations, we're going to ask who they integrate with. And we're going to make sure that they integrate with our existing tech stack. We're going to think about the types of that, basically their terms. So do they require crazy terms or not? We're going to be looking at how they price. So for example, if they price per, if it's an email and they price per email, well, Calendly has millions and millions of users. Does that make sense for us? So we're basically like thinking in advance of, it's almost like creating a job rec, right? So we're thinking in advance of all the things that we need. And then in the process of talking to vendors, we are basically just evaluating them on that. And then a good leader like a Darren or my MOPS or sales ops leader will come to me with a presentation and say, hey, I've talked to these 2 vendors, 3 vendors, 4 vendors. They'll give a check mark, an X, based upon all of those different criteria, and with their final recommendation. And then I'll ask questions, and I usually will take their recommendation, or we'll say, hey, we're close. I want you to talk to them and evaluate it yourself.
Final question, because I know there's so much that we could go deep on. I want to get into the brain of C-suites right now, today, August 25th. What is the most pressing thing on their minds?
It's a super duper cliche, but it is AI. I hate it. I hate saying it. It makes me want to vomit saying it, but that is all. I can tell you, being in so many different board meetings, it's all board members are pressuring C-suite about is, what are you doing with AI? How are you doing it? How are you building things 10 times faster? How are you selling faster? How are you thinking about efficiency? And the frustrating thing is that I feel like there is a very mismatched level of expectations relative to the reality. And so board members are heavily pressuring all of us to think about AI tools and replacement, but then when we ask them what success they've seen, they can't really come up with good examples. And so it's just, there's a lot of, like, I wouldn't say panic, but it's close to it. There's a lot of just this anxiety among the C-suite, knowing that we have to do things differently, but we just don't necessarily have a blueprint of how to get there. And I think one of the big things that a lot of people are seeing is that it feels like there are a lot of startups that are coming up that are sort of thinking about how to use AI first. And at least from a hype perspective, they're doing a good job of saying that they are, not hiring lots of folks, or they're working really fast, or using a lot of AI. And so there's a lot of feeling among bigger, more established companies that they're going to get disrupted if they don't think about these practices first. But the team members aren't necessarily AI first. So you have people that are established in their careers 10, 15, 20 years into their careers. And it's generally hard for them to make that adjustment of, how do I disrupt everything that I'm doing with AI? So there's just feels like a really big disconnect between what C-suite is being told to do and how we're thinking, but then how we're actually able to operate given the limitations of our teams.
Tongue in cheek here. So whatever I sell as a salesperson, I need to say, if I do window cleaning, I have to bring AI into that. Like,
100%.
This is going to help your AI initiatives.
Yeah, and I would say that almost every company has a specific AI budget. Like, even if they're freezing headcount and freezing money for all other tools, they have a specific budget set aside for AI. So what you're going to find if you're an AI vendor is that everyone's probably going to ask for proof of concepts. They're going to ask for short-term contracts, because typically everybody is kind of evaluating. It's because also new. We don't even know what to look for. So we're all evaluating like 3 to 4 different tools at the same time to solve a problem. And then we're basically doing a bake-off between them. So I would say, don't be surprised if people are asking for these sort of very short-term contracts, and that you're going to have like a lot of churn, because it's just very different for AI tools versus other tools.
It's very fascinating, a very interesting world we're in right now, and I'm sure we can bring you back on to talk deeper into this. So much great insight here, so many great insights. Jessica, if one major takeaway you'd like a sales leader listening to this, she's thinking about, I need to help my sellers be more effective selling to the C-suite, and I'm a seller, and I'm listening to this and this episode as well. What's your major takeaway to both of us, the seller and the sales leader?
The number one takeaway is understanding who really has the decision-making power. And it might be someone way, way lower down the chain than you think it is. And don't discount that.
I love it. If we want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for us to go about doing so, Jessica?
You find me on LinkedIn like everybody else.
All right, Jessica, we'll look forward to connecting. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate your insights.
Thanks so much.
That was Jessica Gilmartin. I told you, right? She just got so much fire. It was amazing. And the part that I love is like, is like the subtle things that she didn't necessarily say, but underlined, tied back to it. So let's give one of those examples. You remember the part where she was talking about how, going over the head of her team member to go to her. It's not so much about that, but the fact is, we as sellers need to be able to know how to best help her team member. I think she called his name Darren, help him to win. Because if we can help him to win, he's going to be able to help us to get access to her. And yeah, you might think I'm doing amazing stuff trying to go around, circumvent her, but like she said, it's going to get knocked back down and say, who is this dope trying to get in touch? It's going to come back down to this person, and they're going to probably be embarrassed, and you're going to probably be embarrassed, and you're not going to hear from them again. So my feeling is, listen to what she shared, try these things, because you're going to see a huge result. Thank you for checking it out. If you love the episode, please give it some love on social. Share it with and tag me and Jessica on LinkedIn. But tell someone else about it. Just please. There's a lot of value in this one. Don't tell your your competitors, because they're going to know how to get some edges on you, right? Or some edge on you. But here's what I would like for you to do, though. If you want to get help with improving your sales game, to practice some of these things and to get help with objection handling, I mean, you're opening your pitch. Maybe there's some, for instance, there's a part of your sales call that you just don't know how to fix, one of the meetings, and maybe you did everything right, at least you thought you did, but the deal didn't go through, and you want to analyze that. We have a sales mastermind, and it is calling your name. Like, literally, I want you to join it. We're going to start in September. It's this. Go to thesalesevangelist.com/mastermind to check it out. thesalesevangelist.com/mastermind. It would be an absolute honor to have you join us. As always, I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. I want you to raise the level of thinking, but most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things. See you on the next one.